Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and good evening to anyone who might be joining us from Europe or somewhere else around the world today. My name is Tyler Wiggins. I'm going to be hosting this webinar with my colleague, Ulysses Colon. We're going to get started here at 10:01. I see there's still some people trickling in. So you guys just hold on for 2 minutes here, and we'll get started. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Again, my name is Tyler Wiggins. I am the Product Development Manager here at Everest Solar Systems. I'm going to be hosting this webinar today along with my colleague, Ulysses Colon. Who's going to be assisting with our questions at the end.
Hi, I'm Ulysses Colon. I'm a part of the sales team here at Everest Solar Systems. I'll be Tyler's sidekick today. También para toda la gente de México o de cualquier otro lugar que están en el mundo, aquí voy a estar para ayudarles con cualquier pregunta que tengan en español.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Ulysses. We're going to go ahead and get started. So at this time, I'm going to turn the webcam off and we'll get going with the demo. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So today we're going to be looking at Everest's new online tool that was formerly called BaseOn. It is now called Base. So we're going to be looking at the new features that we recently added for our residential systems. So we now have the ability to do systems with D-Dome and mini rail, which we've had for the last couple of years. And now we can do both cross-rail and shared rail systems. Now, since these are residential systems, they can still be installed for large commercial buildings. So I don't want to seem like these systems are just for your residential house. They can be installed on commercial roofs. So we'll be looking at those today. So to get started and where to find our system, as you can see on my screen here, this is our website, everest-solarsystems.com. To get to Base, you can click on the top left. We have these 3 bars here. If you go to the main menu, you can go to Your Project, and then you can go to Base Online Design Tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. From here, you'll go to directly to Base, this button right here. And that will take you to our Base tool. Now, even without signing in, you can have access to some features in the tool, but you will not be able to get a results and bill of material. So to create an account, it's pretty simple. You'll see at the top, it has my name right here, Tyler Wiggins. If you have not logged in, then it'll say sign in or create an account, I believe. So feel free to go ahead and create an account. We try and get those verified within 24 hours to get you started on the tool. So since I'm already logged in, I'll be able to get started. You'll see on this main page, we have a couple options here, new project, open project, the help button. At this point, we're just going to be starting a new project, but if you've already worked on a project, you can click on the open project button to open a past project and view ones that you've had in the past. So at this time, I'm just going to take a quick 10-second break just to let you guys know that if you look on the GoToWebinar user interface, you'll see an option for questions. Feel free to ask a question at any point during this webinar. We're going to try and leave 20 minutes at the end to go over questions. If we go over, I will stay on. I will make sure all questions are answered today, but I understand that you guys are busy and have things to do, so we're going to try and keep this at exactly an hour if we can. But just so you know, I will continue to ask questions. So if you have time and want to stay on and want to keep asking questions, we can definitely do that. So feel free to use that user interface to get your questions answered, which we'll do at the end. And again, Ulysses will be able to answer questions in both English and Spanish today. So if you prefer to ask your question in Spanish, that's not a problem at all. We can go ahead and get that answered in both English and Spanish. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to click on New Project. You'll see this come up talking about any unsaved data, current project will be lost. This is just a reminder in case you are working on a project, just reminding you to save. It'll come up regardless of whether you've been working on a project or not. It's just sort of a helpful little reminder for you. So go ahead and click OK. And that will bring us to our project tab. So during this project tab is where we input the address. So as you'll see, the tool understands that I'm in the US, so it's bringing up this map. For our customers who are in Latin America, you can input a address for Mexico and do an installation. That's not a problem at all. This is using Google Maps to pull up the address, so it will pull up that address in Mexico as well, or anywhere else in Latin America. So for this project today, we're just going to do a simple one in Southern California. Type in the address here, and it autofills what we need, which is this first one. And I'll go ahead and zoom in. And we just have for this one, looking at a nice simple gable roof. So on this project page, you have the option of naming the project. I'm just going to do something simple. We're looking at a shared rail project, so we'll go shared rail test. You can call it literally whatever you'd like. In the design method, this is where we would choose ASE 710, 705, excuse me, or 716, which will be an option coming up in the future. For all those states that are moving to 716, we will have that as an option. We're working on it now. You can go ahead and put the author in here. I could put my name if I wanted to, for example. And then I could put some customer information down here in these. And these will show up on the report at the end, so that can be useful to have. I'll leave those blank for now for this example. So once we've completed that, we're going to go ahead and move to the roof tab, which you can see at the top up here. So for those of you who have been using Base and are familiar with dome projects, the flow is still exactly the same. So to draw a roof, we're going to look at this east-facing roof right here. We're going to put some solar modules up there. I will click on the plus button. And just a tip, if you hover over any of these buttons, it will come up with a little description on basically what that button does. So you see if I hover over this, it says delete roof. In this case, the only option I can do is add roof. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then I will move over to gable roof. So I'll click on that. In this case, since we're looking at gable, you have the options for monopitch, gable, or hip. But in this case, we're looking at gable roof, so I'll click there. Rectangle. This is a rectangular gable roof. And then I have options for what roof type I'm going with, and this will help determine what roof attachments and systems are compatible with that roof type. So in this case, I'm just going to be looking at comp shingle. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on add. So now it comes up with a X-looking cursor. You can see it on the screen right there. I'm going to draw the roof in. Now, with them, it is important on what side of the roof you draw on first. But if you make a mistake and draw on the wrong roof, that's okay. It's easy to fix. I will show you that as well today. So you always want to start with the eave of the roof first, or the bottom of the roof. In this case, it's going to be this line right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the corner, draw this up to the top, and then move this out. And you'll notice that it's green. Basically, what that's telling me is that if I was to click anywhere when it's green, it's just going to lock that roof into place. So at this point, I'm going to bring it up to the ridge here on the top of the roof. Go ahead and click, and now I have my roof drawn. So as you can see, limited to how far I can zoom in based on what Google Maps allows for. So you do have an option to work in an easier working space. If you look at the top right, you will see this option for switch to 2D view. So if I click on that, I now have a much bigger working space to work with, and I can zoom in and zoom out a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's say that when I drew that roof in, it did not create the appropriate dimensions. Let's say that I've measured this roof, or I have dimensions of what this roof is, and let's just say for this example that I know that it's 40 feet in that direction. I can simply click on the button, or sorry, click on the number, and I now have the ability to manipulate this. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 40 feet. So it recalculated that roof and brought that in. So now have that at 40 feet. Okay. So at this point, I now have some options on determining what the parameters should be for this roof. So let's say for this example, I knew that it was 20 feet tall. So on the left-hand side, I'll go ahead and make that 20 feet. The roof pitch, for this example, let's just say I knew that it was, I don't know, picking an arbitrary number here, 18 degrees. And if I accidentally chose the wrong roof covering at the beginning, I could have the option of changing it here. I want to keep this at composite shingle, so I'll keep that there. But if I needed to change that, I could do that, right? And let's just say, for example, that we did draw the roof on the wrong side and it had the arrow facing left or facing the wrong side of the roof, basically saying that this line over here was the eave. I could change that by changing the roof pitch orientation. You can see how that changes it. See, and now basically what this is saying is that this roof is sloping downwards, which we know is not the case with this particular roof. So I will go ahead and change that back, but you do have that option. And then the final parameter to change is the rafter spacing. So in this case, I know that these rafters are spaced at 2 feet. For anyone who might be listening in from Latin America, I know that these roof types are not as common there, and mostly dealing with concrete or with metal roofs that have those spacings. So if you were working, for example, let's say on a metal roof, then and the rafter spacing was something like you know, 1 meter or 1.5 meters, you could change that here, and that would bring out those rafter spacings there. One thing I should mention, let's say that you did want to work in metric instead of imperial units. If you look at the very top of the page, we do have that option for metric versus imperial. So today we will be looking at using just imperial units, so I apologize for those who are not as familiar with those unit types. We will be doing some webinars in the future that will be in Spanish, specifically for our customers in Latin America, and we will do those in metric. So we will have that option as well in the future. Again, with languages as well, this can be changed to a variety of languages, English, Spanish, French, wherever you're listening from, we do have a lot of options for that. So I will continue on to adding obstructions. For the sake of time, I will not be able to go through all 3 obstruction types, but you do have the option to draw polygon obstructions, you have the option to draw rectangular obstructions, and you have the option to draw a line obstruction. So with a line obstruction could be something like a conduit pipe that's running across the roof. You can draw that in. Just for the sake of time, I will just be looking at a rectangular obstruction. I'll assume that there is like a skylight on this roof. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of arbitrarily place this thing out. Again, using this 2D view, it does give you a nice option for knowing what the dimensions are with this. You don't have to be exact though. This is again something that can be manipulated. But for this example, I'll assume it's a 3 foot by 4 foot skylight. That's pretty big, but we'll just go with that. If this is not in the appropriate location I need it to be, you have the option of moving this around. So we'll just place that right there, just for fun. You have a couple options here on things like roof height and minimum offset shading. So for this one, I'll look at, we'll just assume that this has a, I don't know, it's probably unrealistic skylight, but just for the sake of this example, we'll assume it's 2 feet tall. Where this could be important is looking at things like shading. So if I move that obstruction height to 2 feet and then click on the show shading button, it is going to show me, you know, at our worst case here, we're assuming that we're in solstice basically on December, where that sort of worst case shade path is going to be. So you do have some options. For something like a skylight, probably not as big of a deal, but if it's something like a chimney, you know, you could look at that. So we'll have that option. And then things like offset. Let's say with this particular obstruction, I wanted to maintain a 2 foot offset around this thing. I can go ahead and make that 2 feet, and now it's not going to place any modules within 2 feet of this skylight. So we'll go ahead and leave that there. And we'll move on to our design tab, actually placing modules on this roof. So if I click on design, it's going to bring up 2 sort of areas over here on the left-hand side. So we're going to start with the module. You have the option of doing a user-defined module if the module does not exist in our library. You can click on user-defined and then add the module parameters in. In this particular case, I know what module I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with an LG. So if I scroll down here to LG Electronics, I'm going to go ahead and pick an A5. Seems to be the pretty common one right now. Let's see here. Here we go. We'll go with this one. So now I have that module selected. So now if I click on module arrays, again, everything's grayed out because the only option really here is to add a module field. Can't manipulate anything until I have that field in there. So if I go ahead and click on the plus, we now have the option for shared rail or cross rail. I'm going to go ahead and choose shared rail for this particular case. I'm going to keep these as portrait orientation modules. And then we have the option to draw a module field or complete roof. We'll look at both of these today. For this example, I will start with complete roof. So go ahead and click on that. And then we will click on the add button here. So what this does when I click on complete roof is the system is adding as many modules as it possibly can onto that roof. So if I zoom out here, we will see that it did that. It squeezed as many modules as it possibly could onto this roof without going into the obstruction offset that we required right there. So depending on the jurisdiction, this might be realistic install. However, if we have to deal with things like fire aisles, or maybe there's some jurisdictional requirement that requires us to have an offset from the roof edge, this may not be realistic. So how do we deal with that? If you come over to the minimum roof edge distance, that's one way to. I can, let's say for this particular example, there is a requirement by this jurisdiction and we could not be within 3 feet of any roof edge. So I can go ahead and change this to 3 feet. It's going to recalculate, and now it's saying, okay, based on that new requirement, that 3 foot offset, and that requirement I have where I cannot get within a couple feet of this skylight that we constructed here, this modules you could possibly fit in portrait and in shared rail. So that's what we have. So for this example, we'll just assume that that's the case and go with it. However, if I wanted to look at only creating an offset maybe on 2 sides of the roof, you have the option of deleting these modules. So if I go to the delete modules button, looks like the eraser up here on the left-hand side, click on that. I have the option of just clicking once and deleting these modules. Let's say, for example, I wanted to delete this column, or you can try holding the control or shift button. So if I hold control, it will delete that entire column. If I hold shift and click, it will delete that entire row. So that will help you delete those modules faster. And with this option, you can delete any of these modules here. You're not just restricted to these edge modules or corner modules. So back with this example, it's going to do something simple. Keep it at a 3-foot offset here. Oops, looks like it's calculating right now. Sorry about that, folks. Get this fixed. If you notice that the system is paused for whatever reason, it's likely that it's trying to calculate and account for that new offset that you put in. So if you look in the top right-hand side, you might see a calculating button, and it's just trying to bring in those modules with those new parameters that you just defined. So sometimes it can take up to 5 seconds, as we just saw, to account for those new parameters. So we've got that in there. We're going to go ahead and continue on. If you decide that maybe shared rail was not the best choice, you have the option of going back to Crossrail or whatever other option there may be for that particular roof type. In this case, we're going to keep it on shared rail, so we're happy with that. Don't need to change anything. You do have the option of going from portrait back to landscape if you want to see maybe you can fit more modules in with landscape. I don't know, maybe it depends on the roof geometry. You can try that. In this case, we're just going to stick with portrait, keeping it simple. Tucking the rails. So what this is talking about is in shared rail, you do have the option of bringing that rail in if you want to hide it so it's not shown from the ground below. So we'll look at just tucking that front rail for this one. And I'll show you what that looks like in our results tab. We will have the option of moving to a hidden end clamp. We went ahead and coded that into the system, but this product may not be available at your distributor yet. So if you're looking at implementing that product into your system, please get in touch with your local sales rep. You can also feel free to email us at info@everest-solarsystems.com. It really depends on the distributor if this product is available or not. So in this case, I won't be looking at using a hidden end clamp, and we'll continue on. Distance modules on the long side. So what this is referring to is the distance that you want to keep between your modules in shared rail. So if I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on this to show you exactly what I mean. Really have to get pretty far in here. So the way shared rail is working is that rail is splitting these, let me zoom out a little bit to explain it better, is splitting these 2 rows of modules here. But there's no clamp that's going in between the modules, these 2 modules right here, for example. So you can define what you want that distance to be. So what that gap should be is normally dependent on the manufacturer's recommendation. We always recommend at least 1/4 of an inch. In this particular case, it defaults to 0.4 inches just to be conservative, but really that's something you want to see with your module manufacturer to make sure that you're meeting the minimum requirement spacing between those modules. So things like thermal expansion can come into account if you're packing these modules really tight together. So it's good to consider things like that. So we'll go ahead and keep that at the default. You have the option of changing the clamp color. So if these modules are black, I might want to go with black clamps. I'm going to go ahead and keep that on silver for now, just to keep things simple here. Thermal gaps. These only really come up with commercial projects. So we might do a webinar later just looking at commercial projects, but I will just kind of briefly explain this the best I can. So let's just, for the sake of example, assume that this roof was 200 feet long going in this left and right direction here, and we were trying to fill modules on that roof, we would not be able to keep a continuous array for 200 feet. It would exceed the maximum allowable array length that Everest requires for these systems. So you may have to place a thermal break in between, which basically just means that we're taking what we would ideally like to have as one array, but because it's too long, we have to split it into 2 arrays, or maybe 3 arrays or 4 arrays, depending on how long that building is. So if I was going to add that thermal break, I would come over here and click on the edit thermal breaks. And then let's say I wanted to break it right here. I would simply click on that line where I want to split these into 2 arrays, and I would click on the break present button. So we won't look at doing that today because with this array, it's so small, we don't have to do that, but that is how you would do it. And you have the option to break this as many times as you'd like. So if you were, though, to draw the roof in, a large roof, and have that large array, the system base will break those arrays for you in what it feels is the most conservative place that will make sure that your bill of materials is still as less as it could be. So it will automatically place those breaks in there for you, but you will have the option to manipulate where you want those broken if there's aesthetic reasons or other. You still have some freedom to move those breaks around. So that's how you would do that. So now that I have my array in, I have the offsets that I want, I have the obstructions in place, I have the system that I want. Everything is looking basically how I want. The last thing you can do is come down into the bottom left and look at the module fields information and make sure that you're fitting the amount of modules that you wanted to. Let's say in this case, maybe I only needed 14. I was like, oh, well, it gave me 16. I can just come in here again and delete these 2 right here. So I'll go ahead and do that. So now I have the array looking exactly how I want. I have the 14 modules. Let's just say for this example, I really needed to get 4.2 kilowatts. I have that right there. And I'm ready to move forward. So I'll go ahead and come up to the top left and click on loads. And now this is where you add the wind loading and snow loading information. For any customers who are in Mexico or Latin America or anywhere else around the world, we do have dedicated sales team members who can help you find the most applicable wind exposure, risk category, and wind speed for your project. We are actively right now working on a system to have Mexican wind speeds and wind loads added to the system so that we will make that much easier. I don't have a timeline on when that will be done, but we're aiming to have it done before the year is over. But in the meantime, you can contact someone from the sales team. We have an office located in Guadalajara. You can always feel free to email as well, info@everest-solarsystems.com, to have someone help you if you have some questions regarding this. Due to the sake of time, I will not be able to go through and explain exactly wind exposure and risk category, but we may have a webinar later where we go through more detailed looking at these things. But a lot of these, for residential projects, a lot of these factors are determined by the jurisdiction. So if you're ever confused on whether it should be wind exposure B, C, or D, I would highly recommend speaking with either the engineer of record on the project or speaking with the jurisdiction to see if they have any requirements for what those wind exposures need to be. In this case, I'm going to go with wind exposure B. This one's in a residential area, the building's surrounded by other buildings on all sides. It's more than likely a B. However, again, jurisdiction dependent, so definitely something worth investigating for your particular project. Same thing is said for risk category. I'm just going to assume that this one is risk category 2 since it's a standard house, but this will vary again depending on the jurisdiction. For wind speed, I know in this area it's 110 miles an hour. Let's say I did not know what that wind speed is. Again, the very best place to go would be to speak with the jurisdiction or the engineer of record. If that's something that you're unable to or you're trying to find out quickly, you can also go to this link right here, ATC wind speed by location. If I click on that, I will have the ability to put in the address and it will pull up what it believes is the wind speed for that area. So you can do that as well. In this particular case, like I said, I know it's 110 miles an hour, so I'm going to go with that. We're in Southern California, so there's not going to be any snow loading, but if there was, I would have the ability to add that in right here. For this example, I'm going to keep that at 0 and continue on. So now I have my loading. Got everything I need, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the results tab. So I'll click on that. So what it's doing right now is it's calculating exactly the best locations for those attachments. It's calculating in the amount of rail that I need and where those attachments should be placed with respect to the rafters that I had below there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to view those rafters. So I have the project here. The blue lines represent the rails. Again, we're in shared rail here. So you can see we have 2 rows of modules. This rail is being shared between both of these rows. The gray squares are the attachments. You can go ahead and zoom in and look at those. If you see these little rectangles on this side, that is the rail connector, also known as a splice. So that's where both of those rails need to be connected depending on the cut length that you're using. So this system is, again, a bill of materials estimator. This system does not take into account project-specific needs. I know for those installers out there, you know how things can change on the roof. You may have designed a project one way, but when you get up there, things have to change and have to be manipulated. The system can't obviously take any of that into account. So again, this is just the best estimate. So it will give you an estimation of the bill of materials you need, but that may change depending on the particular project. So I do think that's worth noting. So maybe I want to see exactly where these attachments are being located. What's the rafter spacing here? If you go into the top right, you'll see a button that kind of looks like pieces of paper stacked up. This button's called Show or Hide Components. So if I click on that, I now have some options on things I can hide or look at. So let's say I wanted to look at the roof structure. I can click on that and see the rafters here. So I know that it's spacing these attachments out. It looks like, you know, it's on every 4th rafter or 3rd rafter, if you want to call it that. And we know these rafter spacings are 24 inches apart or 2 feet. So I know we're looking at 6-foot spacings here. Same thing up there. So it's choosing those rafter spacings depending on the zone with which these modules are located. Well, how do I know what the zone is? If you click on the roof zones button up here, you can now see where those modules are located on the roof with respect to the wind zones. So if I zoom out here, better understanding. For those who may not be familiar with zones, these are the areas on the roof that experience higher wind loading. So I could go on for a while talking about this, but I'll try and keep it short for the sake of time. But when wind hits the roof from particular directions, it will cause higher pressures on those modules, depending again on the location of those modules with respect to the edge of the roof. So these red zones here are roof zone 3 or corner zones. Those experience the highest amount of loading, and you will have the shortest attachment spacing for modules located in that zone. The yellow zone is the edge zone. You have the 2nd highest loading, and the rafter spacing is shorter in those zones with respect to zone 1, which is or also known as our center zone. This has the least amount of loading on it. We can see this entire module field is located in that center zone, and that's why we're able to get these 6-foot spans using our light rail. So now let's say, for example, that we did not want to look at using the light rail. Maybe we had high wind loading or high snow loading. How can I change that? If you come into the base rails section here on the left, you can change it to 48X, 48XL, or 80. 48X being our lightest rail, XL being our mid-sized rail, 80 being our heaviest rail. We're in Southern California. I'm already getting 6-foot spacing, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that on 48x here, our lightest rail. If I wanted to look at changing to dark rail, I could click on this button here and it would change it to dark. If I wanted to use microinverter mounting kits or optimizer mounting kits, I can click on this button, or it's automatically defaults assuming that you're going to use them, but let's say you didn't want them, you can uncheck that. Cable clips, it's defaulting to adding cable clips for wire management. You can uncheck that if you want to use something else. End caps, whether or not you want them, and then sleeves. If you're unfamiliar with what a sleeve is, it's essentially a component, an aesthetic component that fits on the end of a mill rail to give it the appearance that it's a dark rail. So definitely popular among some of our customers, not so much others. Definitely personal preference thing, absolutely not something that is required. So neither of these 4 items right here are required for your install. They're really aesthetic, or I guess with the exception of the microinverter mounting kit would be required. If you planned on mounting your microinverters or optimizers to the rails, you would need that. But these other ones aren't really required. It's really up to you if you want to use them or not. So you have the option to remove those from your bill of material should you want to. With fastener, I have the choice. If I wanted to use a third-party roof attachment, I could just have the L-foot slotted set. For our installers in Latin America, I know you guys are working on concrete roofs. The L-foot slotted set is what you would go with for that. In this particular case, I want to use the Everflash eComp kit since I'm working on a composition shingle roof. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now I have it. You come into system details here. It'll give you some brief information about the modules. If I click on a module, it'll give me some more information about it. I can also click on the rail to look at how long that rail run is, what the composition of it is. It uses a 13.8 foot rail plus a 9.75 foot rail spliced right there, so you can understand what your cut lengths would be. Again, though, that can change when you get on the roof for the project. So it's always advised to take a look at the roof this is being installed on before assuming that cut length would work for that particular project. So always something to keep in mind. So you have that information there. Looks like we're starting to run low on time, so I'm gonna kind of speed things up a little bit. Again, we will have a question and answers portion coming up here in the next 10 minutes. So move into the summary tab. I have a couple options here. You'll see I have my bill of materials right here with the quantities. If I have more than one roof, there would be more than one roof listed there. If I click on the generate button, it's going to generate a report with all of these options up here selected. Let's go ahead and click generate. Again, it needs to calculate. It's pulling everything that we just did into this report. Download it as a PDF. Click on that and open it up. You zoom in a little bit to make this easier to read. Whoops, sorry about that. There we go. All right. We'll have the title page, the project name, author date, project data. These are all of those wind speed parameters that we put in, the building parameters, the loads, module information. Come down here to the assembly pan, look at those rail lengths we talked about, cutting lengths. Look at the fastener spacing, some information about the module array. Again, sorry, I'm going to go a little fast here just to make sure we have some time. Here's the basic location of where the module is with respect to the roof dimensions and the rafters. We have a more detailed layout here showing where those attachments need to go. Again, I just want to state that the location of these attachments is always dependent on the engineer of record for the project. So just because the system is telling you that they need to be staggered, for example, does not mean that they necessarily have to be. Every project is different. This system cannot account for every detail for each project. So it's always advised to consult the engineer of record for the project to make sure that those attachment spacings are going to work for that particular building. This base on tool is only looking at the racking itself. We have no way of determining whether or not the system is compatible with the building itself, the building structure itself. If we move on to the results tab, we'll see some information here about fastener, the base rail that we chose, some information about the array itself, how long it is, how wide it is, orientation, the weight of the system, and some additional notes. We have another report talking about snow loads, wind loads, dead load on the system, and then the span table. In this case, we only have modules in the center, so we're not even showing the corner and edge zones. But if we did have modules that were located in those zones, we would have that information there. And then finally, the bill of materials. So I'm gonna really fast, just because we're running low on time, spend 5 minutes looking at hipped roofs. So let's say that I finished that, I have that bill of material, I wanted to save and come back to this later. I would go up here and click Save Project. It's going to save it as the name that I had in the Project tab. So in this case, I think I called it Shared Rail Test. If I was to go to Open Project in the top left, it would, I would be able to locate that project from there. If I wanted to send this project to a colleague or to someone at Everest to get help with, I could click on Download Project File. It will download this K2O file. You can attach that in an email and send it to someone at Everest to help with the project if you needed help on it, or send it to a colleague if you wanted a colleague to look at it. So you do have that option. So at this point, I will go back to Project tab. I'm going to go ahead and click on New Project. So bring us back to here. And again, sorry, I'm going to go a little fast through this just to make sure we get these hipped roofs looked at. So we're going to look at putting solar on this trapezoidal roof and triangular roof. We've already gone over this, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that for the sake of time. Come into roofs. Now I'll click on hip roof this time. I'm going to start with the trapezoidal section, so I'll click on trapezoid. And then in this case, I'm going to go with tile, just to show you guys tile. So I'll click on add here. So I'll come down here, click on the corner, bring that up. And there we go. If I go into 2D view, let's say I know that this is exactly 50 feet. Again, I can click there and change this to 50 feet. So now we have it at 50. For the sake of time, I won't manipulate any of these parameters. I'll keep them like that. And now I want to look at adding that triangular roof. So now I can go ahead and go back to map view, and I can click on add. And now I can add a second roof, and you can add, virtually an infinite amount of roofs here. I think I've had the most I've had on a project is 12, but I know of you can just keep going. So again, I'm going to start on starting with the eave. Click, I'm going to bring that triangle in. There we go. So one very important thing when working with hip roofs is dealing with this building length button. You'll see this parameter here exists on the triangular roof, but this parameter does not exist on any other. What this is talking about is the longest building length on the building. So for this example, I'm going to assume the bottom of this trapezoid is the longest building length. We know that that's 50 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and add 50 foot here. You might be asking the reason why we need that. That is to help calculate the roof zones on that triangular roof. So that's how we know what those roof zones are. So I'm going to go ahead and move back to roof 1, the trapezoid, and add some modules in there. And this will be the last thing we do before we start our questions and answers section. So I wanted to show you guys basically how to add a module field. Let's say we didn't want to fill the roof max and we just want to look at adding a module field. I will just use the default module to save some time here. If I go to add new module field on the left, you'll see that Crossrail is my only option. At this point in time, we cannot do shared rail on tile roofs. So Crossrail is the only option for those tile roofs. I'm going to go ahead and click on Crossrail. I want to keep these in portrait. And now this time, instead of clicking on complete roof and letting it fill it for me, I'm going to click on just module field. So I'll click add. So again, this is really hard to work with in this view. I'll go ahead and let's just say click and add it in there. Kind of tough to work with. So what we can do though is once it's finished calculating and adding those modules in, you'll see it's very hard to see. I can click on switch to 2D view and really get a better idea. At that point, with the angle I was given, I was only able to add a very small array. I can click this now and manipulate this and drag this down to add more. Hopefully we'll see if we can get 2 rows out of that. It just needs a second to calculate here. Calculating exactly how many we can go, and there it is. So now I have my 2 rows. You have the same options that we had before with deleting these modules. So I can come in and do that. Same options I had before about minimum roof offset. Let's say for this particular jurisdiction, I had to maintain 3 feet. It's probably going to shrink us down to 1 row now, I'm guessing. Yep, see it did there. Because of that, because of how big that offset was, I was really only able to fit that 1 row in there. 2 rows just wasn't possible. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to, maybe it's 1 foot. I don't know. Again, depends on the jurisdiction, what the requirements are. So that's how you add in those module fields if you want to add modules. So at this point, we have 15 minutes left in our webinar. Again, we're going to be answering questions, though, as long as you guys need. So for those who may have missed the beginning, if you would like to ask a question, please feel free to use the user interface on the in the GoToWebinar. You'll see a tab for questions. So I'm going to start taking questions now. Please let us know what questions you have. All right, looks like I got a couple in here. Start at the top.
Sí, estamos grabando este webinar, so yeah. Oh, so the question is this webinar being recorded? La pregunta que están preguntando es de que si vamos a grabar esta presentación. Y si lo vamos a grabar, ya de que se termine el webinar, lo vamos a guardar y luego lo vamos a publicar en nuestra página de web. So ya de que lo publiquemos, lo vamos a avisar a toda la gente para que sepan a dónde lo pueden encontrar. In English, yes, we are recording this webinar. As soon as the webinar is finished, we'll go ahead and save the webinar, and then we'll go ahead and upload it on our web page, which you can find it on there.
Perfect. Move on to the next question here. Will the system support ASCE 716? That's a great question. Yes, it will. At this point in time, it's something that we're actively working on. Unfortunately, I do not have a timeline for that right now. I can say though, as far as Everest systems are going, we are working on ASCE 716 letters right now. It's an open project. It's something we'll have finished, I'm hoping, by July 1st. We're starting with Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, and then I believe we're moving to California next. So we will have, as a company, our systems will, Crossrail and Shared Rail will be supported by ASCE 716. As far as base is concerned, I do not have a specific timeline for that. We're working with our programmers right now to see what's realistic in getting that implemented into this system. So it's absolutely something we're working on. I just don't have a timeline yet. All right, next question here. I have a question here. It says, I specified design method ASCE 710, but it seems to think I chose 705. There's a message that the system has not been, it's not letting me read the rest of the question for whatever reason. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, the GoToWebinar is not letting me, let's see if I can pop this up. Oh, here we go. But that is not what I have selected. That's interesting. I'm not sure what would be causing that. One thing I would look at is making sure, so it sounds like over here in design method, you have chosen 710. I would check in the loads and make sure that you have an applicable 710 wind speed. I would try that. If you believe that it could be like a bug, you can always try hitting F5 on your keyboard, and that will refresh the page. You can try clicking the refresh page button. I didn't save, so it may take us back. Nope, it's still there. You can try clicking the refresh button to see if that fixes it. But either way, if you come into an issue with that, please feel free to email us at, again, it's info@everest-solarsystems.com with any issues that you may find with the system, and I can get that over to our programmers to see if it's a bug. But those are 3 things you can try. If it still isn't working, let me know. Okay, next question here. I have address passed in all caps, not found, but it is in Google Maps. But if you copy and pasted it from Google Maps, you found it there. So are you saying that, if I'm understanding this question right, if you were putting the address in here, it was not able to be found? This looks like, I'll just use the first name. That was a question from Ron. Okay, you're saying you emailed it. Okay, perfect. Then we'll look at that in more detail. Thank you for that one, Ron. Okay. Okay, it looks like we had another question here that they were only given one choice, Mini Rail Express, to use with the system that they were designing, but it was not the rail you wanted to use. My guess is that it was on a trapezoidal metal roof and you wanted to go with Crossrail. So as of the system stands right now for the trapezoidal metal roof, we only have Mini Rail as an option, but we are working on getting Crossrail and Shared Rail implemented with trapezoidal metal roofs as well. You'd have to use a third-party attachment like a hanger bolt or something like that, but as it stands right now, the system is compatible, Crossrail and Shared Rail. Well, I don't know about Shared Rail. It would depend on the roof attachment, but Crossrail for sure is compatible with trapezoidal metal roofs. You would just have to find an attachment to go into the structural members on that trapezoidal metal roof. So I'm assuming that is what the question is. So we'll continue on here. Next question is tilt up system going to be added to base and when? Great question. It absolutely will be added to base. As far as when, unfortunately, I don't have a solid answer on that. Right now, we're trying to get ASCE 716 into base. After that, we're trying to get the wind codes for Mexico implemented into base so we can at least do the flush mounted systems. And then the plan after that is to move into tilted systems and get those on base. So we understand that those are absolutely something we need to get on here. But if you have a tilt system that you need help with, you're always free to work with our engineering team and sales team in Mexico for those systems. And if it's a US system, you're always free to speak with someone on our sales team to help out with that. We do have another online tool that can help with those tilted systems as well. If you go to our page, which you'll see here, the top left, there's your project, and we have, whoops, sorry, let me get this out of the way, Crossrail design tool, and you click on that. This is our old tool, but it can do Crossrail tilt on there. So you're welcome to create an account with that, and it's very basic. It does not have any of the same functionality as base as far as drawing the actual roof and showing the roof zones. It's very similar to like a old school kind of Excel tool where you just implement the rows and things like that, and it'll tell you what the bill of material is. But it can work as a bill of material estimator in a pinch and get you something quickly.
Should I answer that in Spanish for them too? Because
yeah,
tilt up is something that they use.
Absolutely.
So la pregunta era que si ahorita tenemos el sistema de tilt up en nuestro herramienta, pero ahorita el sistema tilt up no está en esta herramienta. Si usted quiere agarrar un liste de materiales para el sistema de tilt up, debería que ir a nuestra página de web que es everest-solarsystems.com. Aquí lo puedes encontrar. You want to click on that real quick?
Yeah.
Y aquí, si le picas acá arriba en la esquina, vas a ver el Your Project. Y luego allí tenemos el Crossrail Design Tool. Y allí puedes agarrar una lista de materiales para tu sistema de tilt-up. Pero ahorita no lo tenemos en Base-On. El tilt-up no es una opción que tenemos ahí en el Base-On.
All right, perfect. So next question here. ¿Puedo descargar el webinar?
Descargar el webinar. Como la pregunta es que si puede descargar el webinar, yo lo que pienso es que si está preguntando que si lo puede bajar de nuestra página de web y si estamos grabando el webinar, so ya de que lo publiquemos, lo puedes encontrar en la página de web.
Exactly. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be sent as an email at the end. So you will have that available to you. So next question is, can we show Google Maps view in the report as well? That's a great question. I have not been asked that yet or requested for that yet, but I think that is definitely something that would be very helpful to have. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down as a potential improvement for the future. It's a great request. In report. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so to answer that question, not yet, but I really like that. So that's something I'm going to see if our programming team can do. All right, next question. Does the program include tilt up and crossrail? So we answered that one already. Unfortunately, not yet, but something we're working on. Definitely something we're working on. All right, next question. Do you have CAD drawings for use into my AutoCAD project? Yes, we do. You need to contact our Everest Sales, or you can contact someone in the engineering department. Again, that email is info@everest-solarsystems.com. If you're already working with someone from Everest, you can contact them and they can help you get those CAD files. We do have some CAD files we can help out with that. All right, next question. I thought I saw a tab for inverters. Are you guys incorporating an inverter list for a complete bill of materials? I see this being useful for distributors. That is absolutely something that we are working on. Right now, it's being implemented in our European systems. It's something that we want to have also brought over to the US. So with our next iteration you'll see come out, I believe that button is likely going to be removed because it hasn't been 100% refined yet for the US side, but that's a great request and something I will speak with our programming team about to let them know that you find that important and that's something we need to add. So I'm also going to make a note of that to have in it. I agree with you. I think that would be useful and that's absolutely something we're working on. We just need to make sure we're getting it working 100% on the US side. Perfect. Okay, got a lot more questions here, so we'll keep going. I have a question here that is from Marco, and he's talking about just for the, it has to do with the AutoCAD question, just for the parts. We do have some available depending on what you need. So again, best thing to do is to speak with someone from sales that's representing your area. If you're not sure who that is, feel free to email that info email. Next question is, what do you mean for ASCE 710? So ASCE 710, 705, and 716, those are the building codes that are used to determine what the wind loading is on the modules, on the actual modules. So depending on what country you're in or what region you're in, there may be different requirements for what code should be used. So for example, if you are in Mexico, you know, and you're in Mexico City, the building code you might be used is that particular building code for Mexico City, and those wind loads might be different than the building codes that are required in Cabo, since they're gonna, in Cabo San Lucas, since there's gonna be hurricanes there. So really, what we mean by ASCE 710 is that's the particular building code that is used, at least right now in Southern California, with that particular wind speed. This system is taking into account that building code and telling us what the pressures are on the back of that module, letting us know exactly what the attachment spacing can be, what that rail can handle, and that's how it's determining what those attachment spacings can be. So that's what I mean by 710. Would Everest at any time share spec with solar tool design? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question, but again, feel free to email something more specific to the info@everest email, and we can see if we can get on a phone call to maybe talk about that. Next question I have is, there's a message that the system's not evaluated for 705, but that is not what I have selected. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. It seems like it may be a bug of some sort, so feel free to email me and we can talk about it in more detail. All right. Okay, I have a question about compatibility for other programs. We get this one a lot. The question comes up of, is this compatible with something like Aurora's API or Helioscope and things like that? So it's absolutely something that we're looking into. At this point in where the system is, we're really trying to get our core systems up and running. So that has kind of taken precedence over looking at getting these integrated with other programs that are out there, but it's absolutely a request. It's definitely high up on our priority list to see what is possible, and it's something we want to work on, but unfortunately it's not something I have a particular timeline on when it could be done. But I appreciate the feedback on that, and it's, again, something I'm going to talk about when we have our next meetings about the future of this tool. Let me move on to the next question. Okay, I have a question here that says, do you handle generic symbols? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think this one's coming from Marco. If you could elaborate on that a little bit more in another question, then I'll see if I can answer that better.
Symbols on like the tool, maybe.
Like adding in, are you saying like a symbol for text? Maybe you can add a little more to that and I'll see. Let me move on to the next question here. Often I have standing seam metal roofs commercial products. We use third-party attachments with a crossrail. Perfect. You do have that. So with this system, you can do standing seam. I don't think I have time to go over a full standing seam project right now, but you can put in the parameters for what the standing seam widths are. It will still calculate what the allowable spans could be. And then in the results tab, when it has that option, you can either choose the power clamp if you want to go with an Everest product. If you don't, and you want to use a third-party product, you can just click on the slotted L foot. And then it's going to give you that bill of material. It's not going to include that third-party roof attachment. It will just have slotted L foot there. And you can move on. So what we're in the next release that we have, which I think is coming up in a couple weeks, we're going to have third-party roof attachment as an option in the results tab. So you can click on that, it'll tell you how many you need. It's not going to assign like a weight or a name to it because we don't really know what attachment you want to go with. It'll automatically give you the L feet for that as well. So we'll account for that in your bill of materials. Question in Spanish, so some translating here.
Ya mire, ya recibí el correo de confirmación, pero al momento de hacer login, la página me dice que mi correo no ha sido verificado. Ok, so lo que tengo que hacer es, yo voy a entrar a la Alimenta y voy a verificar tu email. So ya de que lo verifique, dame como unos 5 minutos, 5 a 10 minutos para que todo ya esté aceptado y ya después de eso puedes usar la Alimenta. So the question was, he registered, he signed up and everything, he got the confirmation, but he hasn't been verified yet. So I'm going to go into the page right now here and after the webinar is over, and I'll go ahead and verify everyone that has logged in or everyone that has signed up. That way you can get access to the tool.
Yeah. So we try and have these emails verified if it's during the day, at least within 4 to 5 hours. But if it's over the weekend, it's going to have to wait until Monday. So we're verifying these within 24 hours, Monday through Friday. So try and get them verified as often as we can. We know there's going to be a huge influx of users over the next couple of weeks, so we're going to try and get those verified as quickly as possible. But if you're having any issues with verification, again, feel free to email us, give us a call. we'll help you out. We're here for you. All right, got 10 more questions here. We're gonna keep going. Root pitch orientation azimuth usually has north as 0 degrees. Usually has north as 0 degrees. Oh, I think you might be referring to in the roof tab when it lists this roof pitch orientation here. I'll speak with my team about that and see if we can get a little more detailed on what you mean. I'll run through a couple examples to see, but that's some good feedback. Okay. Okay, we have a question from a customer in Guadalajara. Is the base Everest system available for use in the web to the user and Everest Solar customer? This can be used by, I mean, really any of our customers. All you have to do is create an account and you'll have the ability to use it. There's no monthly fee. I mean, it's free to use for any of the Everest customers. So it doesn't matter where you're located. If you have internet access, you'll be able to use this system. Perfect. Another question here. I'm having trouble with this one. It says, is it like using the start draw program? I'm not familiar with that. So I don't know if I can answer that question. That one looks like it's from Marco. If you could elaborate a little bit more on what you mean, then we'll try and get that answered for you. Oh, I see. You're saying that you use custom solar panels. So if you have that makes more sense. If you're using a solar module that is not in the list, yeah. So if you go into the design tab and click on the module, you can do a user-defined module here. Now there are limitations on that module size, though. So if this is like a standard 60 cell, 96 cell, or 72 cell module, it's going to be compatible with the Everest system. But if you start getting into those kind of crazier modules that you see out there, it may not be compatible. So if you have something that kind of falls outside of the standard dimensions for modules, please contact someone at Everest to see if that module is compatible. So the question in Spanish here, this is take over.
La pregunta es si nomás aplica para ciudades de Estados Unidos. No, también aplica para las ciudades de México también. The question was if this applies to Mexico cities as well. Y sí se puede usar en las ciudades de México o pues de ciudades de otros países también. What about for like other countries?
Yes. Yeah.
Latin America.
Yep. If there's a country that it's not applicable to, it doesn't mean that it can't work. It just means that we haven't programmed it to intake that address, but we can do that. So if you have a project that you want to have something installed in a country that the system's not letting you, please contact us. We can get that working for you.
Sí, so también, no nomás en México se puede usar, pero también en otros países también. Pero si hay algún país donde no funciona la herramienta, pues nomás mándanos un email o también nos puedes llamar para que podamos saber qué país es y luego lo podemos arreglar.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Can we add JBoxes, conduit, etc.? At this point in time, we do not have that as an option, but I'm going to add that in here. Just to clarify, are you talking about drawing the locations of where those can be? This is a question from Joe. So if you're still on, Joe, if you could just maybe add another question just to kind of verify. You're talking about being able to draw it on there, or are you talking about just adding it to the bill of materials itself? I'm gonna go ahead and write this as a note though too. Another question from Joe here. Can we export to Viseo or AutoCAD. At this point in time, we do not have that function. It is being worked on though. So we want to look at exporting as DXF. So it's something that our programming team is working on, but I don't have, unfortunately, it's one of those things I don't have a timeline yet, but that is something that we are actively working on. Again, the goal right now is just to get all of our systems on base and working, and then we're going to slowly but surely add improvements as we go along, and that is absolutely one of those improvements that we want to see. Like 2 questions left. Oh, sorry, just one. Okay, so just to follow up from Joe, drawing them on the screen. I have not been requested to have that happen. You're the first one. That is, that's a great question though, and that honestly I think would be something that is worth having. So
also you can like snip it too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been asked that, but I think that's good. So I think that's something we want to look at doing. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to our improvements list. Drawing it on there. I think that can be important. I mean, especially if you want to see where they can fit on the roof or what lines you want to take on that. So I'm going to go ahead and add that into improvements, and we'll see how feasible that is. But I think that's a great suggestion. So thank you very much for suggesting that. So all right, looks like we have another question here. And again, if you guys have more questions, feel free to keep adding them on. How long does it take to verify an account? We always try and have the accounts verified within 24 hours. Right now, we understand we are going to have a huge influx of people trying to get their accounts verified. So we're basically going to be checking every hour to 2 hours throughout the day for the next couple weeks. So if you're going today, Ulysses is going to get off the phone and he's going to go start verifying accounts. So I would say if you're trying to get yours verified, you'll see it verified in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But you know, if you decide to log on tomorrow and try and get your account verified, it may take an hour or 2. But as long as it's during our work days, we're going to have someone there. All right, another question here. Okay. Question is, will you send me your prototype projects for real life review by a long time installer? So just if you could please verify or give me a little more information on exactly what you're looking for. Joe, are you looking for a project that was actually created with this system and then installed by someone who's been using Everest for a long time? Or are you saying that you are trying to, you come up with a new, looks like you asked to follow up here. When you come up with new products that are not ready, I'm still confused on what you mean. Feel free to give me a call, Joe, or you can call into the Everest office. I'm happy to talk with you a little bit more about that, and we can see what you're trying to do. Another question here in Spanish. Yeah.
Y si el proyecto no es un techo, sino terreno, se puede usar en la herramienta. La pregunta es si el proyecto no es en un techo, sino un terreno, se puede usar en la herramienta. Ahorita no tenemos nuestro ground mount system en la herramienta. Solo lo que debería que hacer es mandarme un email, si no a mí, pero a alguien que está trabajando en México. Ellos te pueden ayudar con un lista de materiales, pero ahorita no tenemos nuestro ground mount system para los terrenos en la herramienta. The question was if we currently have our ground mount system on our base on tool, and the answer is no. Yeah. We do not have the ground mount system on there. But if you guys want to email info@everest-solarsystems.com with any inquiry you might have for a ground mount system, we can then help you out in creating a bill of materials.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can get in touch if you're already working with someone at Everest and you have someone in sales team that you're working with, feel free to contact them. They can absolutely help you out with that. Looks like that is the end of our questions. Thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate your guys' questions. I really appreciate your guys' feedback. This is something that we just released last week. So there's definitely things that we're going to be improving as we move along. And if you guys have any feedback for us, please feel free to call in. Please feel free to email. I would love to hear feedback from you guys. If things are working great, I'd like to hear that. If things aren't working great, I'd like to hear that too. We want to get it fixed for you as soon as we can. We want to make sure that this system is doing everything that you guys need it to do to help you make those sales, to help you guys get those projects installed. We're here for you to help you get these projects done and get them sold. So if there's anything you need that this system doesn't have that it really needs, please let me know. I'll talk to my team. We can get it going. We'll see if it's feasible. We'll get it going for you guys. So really appreciate you guys joining today. Really appreciate your questions. And I wish you guys the best of luck for the busy season. I know it's coming, it's summertime. If you guys are going to be at SPI this year, I will be there in Salt Lake City. Please feel free to come by to say hi. Let me know how things are going. I'd love to hear from you guys. We'll be demoing based there as well, so get some feedback from you too. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to call in. Please feel free to email. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.